Okay, a few more folks. Couple more. All right, it looks like we have a lot to learn today. Couple more folks, if you'll fill out the poll. There we go. So we can see that most of you, this is a new concept of micro-internships and what this program is all about. A few of you have some knowledge. So before we get started here, I'm going to introduce you to Danielle, and I know I'm going to mess up her last name, so she can correct me, please, Danielle. Danielle Ruger-Morowski. Ruger-Morowski. I was close.
Yeah, very.
I got the Morowski right. So anyway, we welcome Danielle. She is an advocate of equitable and accessible pathways from college to career and strives to make that goal a reality as part of the team at Parker Dewey LLC. Parker Dewey makes it easy for companies to get on-demand support by engaging college students and recent graduates in flexible, paid professional projects known as micro-internships. A graduate of Baldwin-Wallace University's Digital Media and Design program and Kent State University's Master of Higher Education program, Danielle joined the Parker Dewey team in early 2022 after 5 years of working in career services at multiple higher education institutions. Thank you, Danielle. Let's welcome her to today's event.
Thank you, Jan. I'm excited to be here and so excited to talk to you all about micro-internships. So since so many of you are new to Parker Dewey, I want to set you up, if you're a multitasker, to be able to do some multitasking. So before we even dig in here, I'm putting a link for everyone in the chat. The link that I've got in the chat right now takes you to this screen right here. So what I want everyone to do, if you don't already have a Parker Dewey account, or even if you do, hit this apply for micro-internships right here. If you don't have an account yet, it's going to walk you through starting to set one up. If you do have an account, it's going to get you logged in. And I'm encouraging y'all to do this because today I'm going to cover a lot of tips and tricks and all that kind of good stuff that is best used in the platform. So why not just do all of them while we're talking about it? So go ahead and take that step. And while y'all are getting that set up, I want to start by acknowledging that you might be facing some challenges when it comes to accessing traditional internships. Now, don't get me wrong. We love traditional internships at Parker Dewey. It's not what we do. You're here for micro-internships today, but we see the value in traditional internships, but we also know that y'all might be struggling to engage with them. So what you see on the screen right now are just a couple of the challenges that we've heard from students. You know, maybe they're not sure what they want to do. Maybe you don't want to commit to something that's 10 to 18 weeks right off the bat when you're exploring. Maybe you have a busy schedule. Maybe you already have a job you can't afford to quit. Maybe you're a student athlete. Maybe you just got too much on your plate for a traditional internship. Maybe you're finding some opportunities, but those opportunities are unpaid and you're looking at your bank account and you're going, this is just not going to work out. Maybe you're just looking to explore. There are a variety of reasons. If any of these really resonate with you, please feel free to put that in the chat. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. Or if you're facing a challenge that you don't see on the screen, feel free to put that in the chat too. I'll share my own example. When I was in school, I got offered an unpaid internship that was like 40 minutes away and I didn't have a car. So lack of transportation, I said, I'd love to get the experience, but I can't do this. So again, feel free to share your own challenges, but I promise this webinar is not going to be a downer. I see Amisha, somebody else struggles with the transportation. I feel it. When I was so excited when I got my first car, but I was like, man, Eloise, that's what I called my car. You would have been much handier a few years earlier. But again, this webinar is not going to be a downer. We're not going to focus on challenges. We are instead going to focus on how micro-internships can help you address these challenges. But to do that, First, have to explain what micro-internships are. So with traditional internships, as you know, you're committing to typically a full semester. You're saying on these specific days, on these hours, I'm going to be in this place. And we've already highlighted that's not always possible for everyone. So micro-internships, by contrast, are specific projects. So we're asking companies, what are some things you have on your to-do list? Maybe they need someone to look through some data. Maybe they need some sort of analysis. Maybe they need something designed. Maybe they need something researched, but specific projects that you all can work on independently. And it's about the specific deliverable, not about an amount of time. So it allows you some flexibility. Most of these micro-internship projects are remote, meaning that transportation issue that Mishwa and I have both is not an issue. And all micro-internships are paid because we know a lot of you cannot afford to spend your time on something unless you're being compensated for those efforts. So Evan, I hear you. Unpaid internships can be challenging. I see Aaliyah has the same kind of challenges. I see Jan also saying, a lot of people saying that they can't afford to do an unpaid internship. So every Parker Dewey internship, micro-internship, is paid. All these projects are professional. So while there's nothing wrong with side gigs like walking a dog or painting a fence, nothing wrong with that. But those aren't the types of projects you're going to find on Parker Dewey. These are all the same types of assignments that would be given to a traditional intern or maybe even a new full-time hire. It's just that by this being short-term, by being project specific, it allows you to kind of try out this company. It allows the company to see if you're perhaps a good longer-term opportunity or longer-term candidate for other opportunities. So it really is kind of like that taste test or dating, if you will, as opposed to jumping into the engagement of a traditional internship. And these projects can take place from all different sorts of industries, all different departments, all different sizes of companies, and they can happen at any time of year, including right now. So that's why I'm encouraging you, create that profile. We're going to see some opportunities today. I see Malene saying they struggle with making connections. Not sure if you want to stick with this career field or mesh it with another. Sounds like you're looking to explore and committing a whole 10 to 18 weeks to something and realizing 2 weeks in, oh, I already have my answer. Can be a little frustrating. Micro-internships can be a great way to help you figure out the answer to that question. So hopefully, folks, when I was explaining what micro-internships are, those benefits were clear, but really want to hit them again because I see from the chat, I hear from you, I've heard from other students, the challenges are real. So I want to highlight how this addresses them. Accessibility. Most of these you're going to be able to do from anywhere. It's real experience. These are not simulations. These are real project needs that companies have. That flexibility, most of these projects, it's going to say, this is what I need. And then you're going to work on that as long as you hit the deadline, whenever it works for your schedule. If that happens to be 3 a.m., that happens to be 3 a.m. Now, make sure you're getting plenty of sleep still. I don't know where you're fitting it in. Get plenty of sleep. But the point is, the flexibility is there. You're still going to get the benefit of networking. So I know we also had Helene mentioning making connections. When you kick off your project, you're going to connect with that professional at that real company to make sure you have an understanding of what's expected, to make sure you know what you're doing, to make sure you have access to all the tools and resources that you need. And then there are probably going to be a few check-ins along the way as well. So even though you get that benefit of working kind of independently, that flexibility, you're still expanding your network. It's a great way to efficiently explore careers. You get to add these experiences to your resume. Now, to be clear, as an independent contractor at Parker Dewey, that's what you're going to put on your resume. We encourage you to ask the company if you can use the company name, and most say, oh yeah, for sure, go for it. But you always want to make sure you ask. So you're going to be adding these to your resume as independent contractor of Parker Dewey. And some companies are using micro-internships very intentionally as a way to audition folks for longer-term opportunities. So while not guaranteed, if you do a great job on your micro-internship, there might be a traditional internship or a different kind of longer-term opportunity, or maybe even repeated micro-internship opportunities waiting for you on the other side. And I know I already mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again because we know it's important. We saw in the chat, it's important. They're paid. So as long as you are at least 18 years old, this is open to students or recent graduates. So if you're getting ready to graduate, You can still use this after you are done with your degree. We are open to international students. You just have to make sure you have appropriate work authorization. Check in with International Student Services, check in with Jan to make sure you know what the options are, whether it's possible for you to do CPT or pre-completion OPT. But the short point I want to get across is international students can do these, and undocumented students can do these as well. All you need is a valid ITIN number. So now that we've covered what micro-internships are, who can do them, really want to get into the weeds of how this works. Now, before we go step by step, I want to remind you what Parker Dewey's role in all of this is. Who is Parker Dewey in the context of micro-internships? Well, we are on the back end and we're taking a look at these projects to make sure that they are micro-internships, that there are specific deliverables, and that they're compensated appropriately. When you are selected for a micro-internship and when you get paid, Parker Dewey is your employer of record. And what that means is when you get paid, even though you're working directly with that other company, you're going to be paid by Parker Dewey. And we are also here along the course of your micro-internship. If you have questions, if something's confusing, if something's not what you expected it to be, you're not sure how to handle it, we are here to support you along the way. So now that we have established our roles, I want to talk now about those steps. First one is creating that profile. So this is where, folks, if you haven't already gone here, if you came late, whatever's going on, go to this page right here, hit apply for micro-internships. If you already have a Parker Dewey account, it's going to prompt you to log in. If you do not have one, it's going to encourage you to make one. Now, I am going to log into my existing Parker Dewey account because if I made a new one every time I did one of these, I would have way too many accounts. But I'm going to highlight some of the information it's going to ask for you. If you're setting this up for the first time, it's going to be the same information. It just might be in a slightly different order. So you're going to put in your basic stuff, your name, email. It's going to ask you for current location and hometown. And I know you're probably thinking, well, this lady just told me most of these are remote. Why do they need to know where I'm located? As a reminder, there are some companies who are using micro-internships as a way to build a pipeline to find talent like all of you that might be a good fit for their longer-term opportunities. So even if this micro-internship is remote, they might say, okay, we want to engage a student in our local area because if they do a great job, we want someone that could come for this in-person opportunity. Now, to be clear, this is not relevant for a lot of micro-internships, but it is for some, which is why we require that information. Another clarification, when we say hometown, we're not really worried about where you're born. So if you were born somewhere and then your family moved somewhere else a year later, you're like, I don't even remember that place. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for here is where do you spend your academic breaks? Where are you during spring break, winter break, summer break? For the same reasons, a company might want to engage you in person if you do a great job on the micro-internship, and this just helps them know if that's a possibility. Now, we are going to take some time and come back for some of these optional pieces, but first we're going to start by hitting all the required pieces. So just wanted to make that a quick note. Next up, you're going to add your education. So make sure you all put California State University, Northridge in there. Education is required. Now, companies do have the ability to feature projects to specific schools. So for example, if there's a company local to your area, as I was talking about, using this as a way to find y'all as a pipeline for their longer term project, then they might feature a project exclusively to you. And we want to make sure you see it. But the only way to do that is if you add your educational institution here into your profile. Again, skipping the stuff that's not required off the bat, coming down to demographics. Want to make it clear, your demographic information is not shared anywhere attached to your profile. The only place we ever do this is aggregate data, just saying this is how many folks are on the platform overall. But this is not something that companies see. This is just for Parker Dewey on the back end. And to be clear, you can always see what companies can see by going to this preview tab. So this allows you to know, with a few layout changes, what your profile looks like to companies. So what we've done so far is we've just kind of gone over the bare bones. These are just the things you need to be able to start looking at opportunities. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to recap a little bit, and we're going to talk about the things that are not just getting your profile set up, but are going to help you be set up for success. I see a question, what would our end date be if we're currently still attending, going up to education? Your best anticipated graduation date, so when you expect you will graduate. If you do not know the exact date, then picking a random date within the month and the year is acceptable. But for most institutions, I imagine California State University Northridge is the same. You can find an academic calendar, usually that goes up to about 4 years in advance, that'll give you a pretty good ballpark of your expected graduation date. So going back up to the profile, this is the first place we skipped over something that I highly encourage y'all to take advantage of, and that is this personal statement. If you go back to this preview, you're going to see that personal statement pretty front and center. So we encourage you to take use of this space to tell companies something about yourself that they're not going to see elsewhere on your profile. So if you're not sure what would go in here, if you're like, okay, I hear you, make use of it, but how do I make use of it? I am going to share a formula with you right now. Give me a second to type. All right, so that formula is to describe yourself with an adjective or a couple adjectives that are both true to you as well as relevant to the types of projects you want to apply for. So for example, if you're interested in projects related to social media, typically that's going to involve working with a lot of assets. It's important for someone to be organized. If you are a genuinely organized person and you're applying for projects that require organization, that could be a great adjective. The next is strengths/experience. So for example, maybe you're the social media person for one of your extracurricular organizations. You could highlight that. So I am an organized whatever major with experience managing a social media or multiple social media accounts for a club. And then your goal. So what is it you're hoping to do on Parker Dewey? Maybe you're very honed in on, I want to be a social media manager. When I'm done here with my education, you could say, looking for social media related projects. Or if you don't know what you want to do, you could say, looking to explore career paths, looking to gain experience, seeking opportunity, whatever kind of industry. But you don't have to put a goal, but sometimes it's helpful for companies to know what it is you're looking for. So here's that formula. I'm putting it in a chat. So I'm going to give a couple examples, and I promise, Matheos, I do see your question. I'm going to come back to it. A couple examples of personal statements. So this person, they were looking to make a career pivot. So they said that they were an organized and deadline-driven professional. They highlighted they've got lots of experience in healthcare, but they were looking to make a change to different industries. Another example, this person said, I am focused, diligent, and critical thinker. They highlighted that they were familiar with Python and Java, and that they were seeking coding, IT finance, and or security projects. So again, make this webinar a doing for y'all, folks. I recently heard someone say they're no longer going to meetings, they're only going to doings. So I encourage you to make this a doing. Use that formula, create your own personal statement. And if you want me to take a look at it, pop it in the chat. Now, going back to the question that was asked, do we need to add a photo to the profile? Highly recommend it. As you can see from the preview, it shows up right there at the top. Now, no full body shots for Parker Dewey, just a standard head and shoulders. Doesn't need to be a professional photo or anything like that in terms of hiring a photographer, but just professional aesthetics. Solid background, nature background, head and shoulders is good. Now, some folks do not feel comfortable having their photo out on the internet. To be clear, this is only going to be seen specifically by the companies whose projects you apply for. But if for some reason you're still not comfortable, you could put a photo or a logo from your institution. You could put some sort of logo that indicates what sort of projects you're interested in. But I do highly encourage you, make use of this space for a photo to show that you've taken time to customize it. I see a question from Evan. Should we keep the personal statement brief and short? 100%. You will see, in fact, you only have 255 characters to work with. So that's why no matter what iteration of these examples you see, they are going to be pretty short. So here's another example. The adjective was communicative. They highlighted their skills as skilled in outreach and public speaking. They also have experience in law and business marketing. and their goal was seeking additional marketing experience. Now, if you save that and you look at the preview, you can see someone's going to be learning something about this candidate that they're not necessarily getting from these other places. They'll see the major, but they're highlighting some of those experiences and some of those goals in a way that is prominent and helps companies in their decision making, but still, as Evan pointed out, succinct, still keeping it short. So something else you can do in this profile section is add affiliations. And affiliations are things that might be true of you that companies might be looking for specifically. For example, some of the affiliations you can add, if you're an honor student, some companies might be looking to engage honor students. If you are a student athlete, you can add that student-athlete. If you are a veteran, you can add that. And these are important to consider and add if you qualify for any of these, because some companies might be seeking to specifically engage these types of students. Adding affiliations that are true to you might result in additional micro-internships popping up. I see we've got a personal statement for review. I'm a knowledge-hungry art major with experience in multimedia art, Photoshop, Maya, ZBrush, traditional, and I'm looking to work in video game art. This is a great personal statement. A couple things that Misha did really well, if you're looking in the chat, you'll see that, is that they clarified, they're ambitious, they are ready to go, and they gave specific skills. Photoshop, Maya, ZBrush, traditional. So companies know Misha's bringing all these skills to the table. So we've got another one. I'm a highly organized and driven individual with a passion for cybersecurity and software engineering. Now, I know in my experience, I gave it all to you as one sentence. Tommy, because you have such a succinct but highlighted passion, I would put a period after engineering and then start another sentence with I am proficient in C++ and Linux and committed to protecting digital assets and developing innovative solutions. Is that good? Tommy, that's amazing. The only change I would make is splitting it into 2 sentences, but that is a fantastic, as long as it fits in the character account. Let me check it for you. I think it should, but sometimes Zoom gives me some trouble copying, so it won't let me copy from the chat. But as long as it fits in there, I think that is great. And Tommy confirmed, yes, it fits. I see the question from Aaliyah. What about an honor society? If your honor society at your institution is aligned with the honors college, or if there's not an honors college, but you're part of the honor society, I know that starts to get a little bit confusing, but if you are part of an honor society or an honors college, that is fair game. Go ahead and put honors student in there. See, we've got one more to check. I'm going to do this last one and then we're going to move on, but want to tell you all how much I super appreciate the participation. I see from Evan, I'm a collaborative individual with an eye for creativity. I am pursuing my major in emerging media production at CSUN. I have experience with Adobe Creative Suite and Avid Media First, seeking out media opportunities. The only change I would make to this, Evan, is instead of individual, that's where I would put emerging media production major. And the reason for that is when you look at your profile, they're already going to see California State University Northridge right up near the top. So we don't need to have another statement saying that you're studying at CSUN. So to keep it succinct, I would just say I'm a collaborative emerging media production major with an eye for creativity. I have experience with, and then the rest of what you've written is perfect. All right, folks, you've got some fabulous personal statements. Moving on to the next section, this experience section. And this is not where you're going to put every experience you've ever had, but this is where you're going to highlight the experiences that are relevant to what you want to be doing. And I want to right up front say that micro-internships can be a great way for you to get your first professional experience. You don't have to be hopping onto Parker Dewey right now with a ton of internship experience. So what you can use and highlight in this section, if you do not yet have external experiences, is you can even add some things from class projects you've done that are relevant to the types of things you want to do. So you can see in this example, somebody was a coder, like they did code as part of their project. So they can add that here. You could put your institution. So market research class at California State University Northridge. I can type, I promise. So you can put the name of your class and your institution, so you're not misleading anyone. You're making it very clear that this was a class, and then you can put your role. So for example, someone took a class where they did a simulation and they were an analyst for a group project. That is a great thing to include. Now, obviously, you'll want to do a better description than what I have here, but just to give you an example then of how that shows up in your experience question or section, they're going to see, oh, market research class at California State University, Northridge, cool. They were an analyst for that class. Oh, they've got some experience, even if it was part of a class that's relevant to what we're looking for. And I see a question, if you don't have experience in your field of interest, can you add past professional positions from a different field? You can. I would just make sure you try, if possible, to highlight experiences that even if they aren't directly related to what you want to be doing, have some transferable skills. And for those who aren't familiar with the term transferable skills, what that means is in that past professional experience, even if it wasn't what you want to go in, you were using some skills that could be used in your future experience. So for example, if you are interested in doing coding, well, I don't have any coding experience yet, but I was a bank teller. Communication or making, actually not even communication, although that's going to be relevant pretty much anywhere, but making sure you keep track and record of things is an example of a transferable skill from both of those things. When you are a teller at a bank, you're going to want to make sure that you are noting all the things you need to note about each interaction so no money goes unaccounted for. When you are coding something, you're going to want to make sure you include documentation in that code so the next person can go in, understand what's going on, so you can highlight those types of transferable skills when you're putting in your description. I see for the experience box, can you include a previous role in an internship? 100%. Highlight internships here, highlight class projects, extracurricular projects, volunteer projects, anything that is relevant to the types of projects you want to be doing. Somebody highlighted they've got a project manager experience for a university proposal. Chef's kiss. That is fantastic. Exactly the kind of stuff you will want to include there. This next section, resume/CV. Students who upload a resume are significantly more likely to be selected, y'all. So make sure you upload a resume. If you're not sure if your resume is in good shape, that is where the Career Center is your best friend. Get that puppy reviewed. You can clarify your availability here. So if you want to only be available for projects or if you're interested in full-time, that's just a little bit of extra information you can give companies. If you are in design or if you have a GitHub or something like that, there's a space for you to put your website. And highly encourage you folks, if you don't already have a LinkedIn, make that LinkedIn and pop that LinkedIn link in there. It's really just an extra step of professionalism. And I have literally sat with companies when they were making decisions and down between someone who had a LinkedIn and someone who didn't. And they said that LinkedIn, just the time that it took to make it, even though it's not a big lift for you all, it doesn't take a lot of time, but they said the person with the LinkedIn just came off a little bit more professional. I see a question for resume. Is that where you can put the other jobs you've had? That is certainly a place where you can put some of them. So you might want to split that resume. You might want to say like highlighted experience, or depending on what your field of interest is, you might say, you know, computer coding experience versus additional experience. On a resume, you typically want to try and front load the most relevant information at the top, but that again is where your Career Center is going to help you out. A question from Evan, and a good one. Even if my LinkedIn profile isn't fully complete, is it still beneficial? I would still put the link because the link is evergreen, meaning the link's not going to change. You could apply for a project right now, later today, next couple days, hop back into that LinkedIn profile and make sure it's in good shape. It's not going to hurt you to have the link, even if it's not completed, but I do encourage you. LinkedIn is going to help y'all with your career trajectories, with connecting with people. The sooner you take a half hour to sit down and make sure that's looking good, the better it's going to make life for you going forward. And then documents. If you have examples of some of these pieces, this is a place where you can highlight things you've done. So if you're applying for a design project, consider uploading maybe a flyer that you've designed. If you are applying for a media relations project or some sort of relations project, maybe you've written a press release. You could upload that press release. Word to the wise though, whatever you have that document titled is what is going to show up in the preview. So what I have uploaded here is a report that I compiled. They're going to be able to click on that and see that. but the name of the document I uploaded was annual report compiled and designed by Career Launcher. If you upload this with final assignment _ final, really for real, this is final, that's what's going to show up here. So make sure you name it what you want to see. I see, can your LinkedIn account be catered to the internship you are looking for? Micro-internships move so quickly. Hopefully you're applying for micro-internships that are genuinely of interest to you. So your LinkedIn account is naturally going to kind of speak to that, but because they move so quickly, I wouldn't recommend trying to spend extra time customizing your LinkedIn for a specific micro-internship, but would highly recommend customizing your resume and your LinkedIn in general for your primary field of interest. And then the question about best GitHub posting location, that is going to be here under resume, where it says website or portfolio, pop that GitHub in there. And that is all the profile section, everybody. So any questions before we move forward to actually looking at projects about the profile? Going once, going twice. All right, let's start looking. Should you include all your previous jobs on the resumes or just the more recent ones? Typically, unless you've done something that is relevant to what you want to be doing in high school, if it's not relevant, I would stick with the stuff that you started doing in college and beyond, unless you worked at someplace for a really long time where you were in high school and it really speaks to your consistency and your work ethic. So that's a conversation, and I know that was kind of a muddy response, but that's a great conversation to have about the specifics with career services, because they, depending on your industry of interest and your experiences, are going to be able to give you the customized best advice. But it's a great question. Thank you for it, Malene. And then Santiago, can I list training team members as transferable skill? If you're applying for a project where communication is going to be key, where engaging with others, where motivating others is going to be relevant, 100%. And then I see a question from Elena. If you're not a US citizen, because reminder folks, if you're not a US citizen, you should check this little button right here on the first page. Will it limit? Very rarely, there are micro-internships that companies are using very intentionally to audition for longer-term opportunities. Now, that itself is not rare, but the rare part is that company just simply may not be able to offer sponsorship. And if that's the case, then that is the only situation where it would limit. But that is not the case for most micro-internships. We have had international students do micro-internships in pretty good numbers. So I would make sure you are checking in regularly and still applying. So now that we have covered all the basics, we're going to move on to applying. I see somebody said they're having trouble with adding their major. If you are having trouble putting something in there, this may just be something having to do with user interface not working ideally. Hopefully it'll pop up if you hit return. If you're hitting add, let me see if it does it in that way. Let's not let me get rid of that one for a second, but let me just put an example here. Hopefully add or return will work. If one's not working, try the other. If neither are working, I would try a different browser. So now let's start looking at the opportunities. I'm going to get two more questions first that I see are coming in because I don't want to miss them, but then I am going to scoot on. If you have a minor, you can add that, but what I would recommend doing is like psychology with a minor in, I don't know why I can't think of another major right now. Sociology, sorry, it's been a long day. So you can save that and then you can see how that's going to show up in your profile. So major psychology with a minor in sociology. As far as adjectives in your personal statement, I would do no more than 3, just 1 or 2 is good. And then question about mentorship for these projects. How much are you going to get from your supervisor? And we are going to talk about that. So as promised, question about browser, would recommend Chrome typically. As promised, let's look at these opportunities. So up at the top, you are going to see any projects that might be featured for your institution. And I think the reason these are particularly featured is CSUN is a HubSpot school. So there are some opportunities here that are only available to your institution that you're going to see at the top. So if any of these in this featured project are of interest to you, encourage you to check those out because you're going to have better chances of being selected. Underneath those, you're going to see all open micro-internships. Now, I want to take a quick note to talk about the platform itself. You'll notice we do not have a lot in the way of filters. Specifically, we do not have filters for things like major. And I know you may be thinking this is an oversight. It's actually very intentional. And I want to share with y'all a success story to explain why. So the student I'm looking for, here she is Claire Telfer. She was a chemical engineering major, right? She was very open about the ways her skills could be used. And she hopped on Parker Dewey and she said, you know what? It's super easy to apply to projects on here. I'm going to apply to anything that interests me, even if it's not directly related to my major. So she applied to a project related to project management. And not only did she get the project, she was like, wow, this really doesn't have anything to do with chemical engineering directly, but I like this work. And the company said, Claire, we like you too. We want to offer you a full-time job, which Claire excitedly accepted. And again, that is for a project. If we had a filter and she said, show me everything for a chemical engineering major, project would have never popped up. So that's why we encourage you, take a minute, look through the different titles, be open to how your skills could be applied. Now, I also want to highlight when you are going down here, sometimes where we lose students is they'll scroll through and say, oh, there's not that much, or I don't see anything that's of interest to me. And then they never come back. So this is where I want to highlight something to y'all. Look at these start dates, okay? October 10th, October 11th, October 13th. These projects move so unbelievably quickly. Like literally helped someone post a project the other day at 9 a.m. They made a selection by noon. So I say that to highlight that these projects are constantly cycling. So they're going to make selections and new projects are going to come in and take their place. So if you feel like there's not a lot of opportunities, or if you feel like there's not something that's of interest to you, my advice to you is log in again tomorrow. Now, another piece of advice I like to highlight, or a statistic really, is that we tend to see people's likelihood of selection go up at around 5 to 10 applications. Somewhere in there, we see that likelihood increase. Now, that is not to say that you won't be selected for the first project you apply for. If you're multitasking right now, if you're applying for a project, the goal is not to have had you heard that and go, oh, no, I'm not going to get this one. Not true. But I like to share that statistic because if you don't get that first one, or even the second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever one, continue applying because that's still in the realm of normal. In fact, here's another success story from Lydia. And when we interviewed her, she had done 5 micro-internships. She was getting ready to work on her 6th one. This was in February. She's probably done more by now. And when we asked, what advice do you have for your fellow students? She said, do not let rejection keep you from applying to future projects. She highlighted very transparently, you get rejected more than you get accepted, but that's okay. She said in her experience, once she got one, it got the ball rolling. And remember, it's easy to apply for these. It's not a big time-consuming thing. So scooting back over to looking at opportunities, if you decide that there is one that is of interest to you. So if you're looking through these and you're like, okay, I want to learn more about brand update execution. What do we got going on here? You can click this drop down. You're going to see when the company would like it to kick off, when they'd like it to finish, the estimated number of hours, because if that's a ballpark, you're paid based on completion as opposed to hours. But this benefits you in a couple ways. If this is the first time you're doing something like this, if it takes you just a little bit longer, no one's going to get frustrated. Alternatively, if you do this project in 8 hours, you're still going to get paid the amount you see here. You'll be able to read a little bit more about this project. And if you say, okay, I've got these skills, I have the time in my schedule, I'm interested, you can hit apply. And then this first question, why do you think we should select you for this opportunity? Always going to be there. So good to start practicing this question. If there are additional questions, and what those questions are, is up to the company. And that is the entirety of the application, folks. They're going to see a combination of your profile as well as your responses to these questions. Now, when companies get your applications, they do have the ability to message you. They might ask a follow-up question. They might set up an interview to make sure it's a good fit. But most companies are looking to move rather quickly. So a lot of them will make a selection just based on those two things, the profile that we already talked about and these application responses. And that is why it is so important, with these being the only two things to help you make an impression, that your profile is complete and that these application responses are thoughtful. So we have resources to help you be thoughtful with these responses, to help you give examples, to help you stand out. But before I get into those, I want to ask if there's any questions about the process of looking for micro internships or applying just in general. Going once, going twice. All right, so let's talk about those resources for making sure you are responding thoughtfully. These are all things we already went through. Oh, quick reminder though, if you ever want to go back and forth between your profile and the opportunities, from the opportunities, you can say, hey, profile, make your edits. If you are in any of these other sections and you're going, wait, how do I get back to the opportunities? Keep in mind, only from profile and preview do you see this little back to dashboard hop up. So if you're struggling, just get yourself to profile or preview. We talked about all these tips for success. We talked about how to see the micro internships. Let's talk about these responses. So I'm going to put this resource in the chat for you. This is how to ace a short answer application. I'm going to walk you through this and talk about some tips for making sure you're responding to these questions thoughtfully. Number one tip. Look for the question under the question. And what we mean by this is every single project you apply for is going to ask, why should we select you for this opportunity? Now, I want you to imagine if you are applying for a micro internship like the one we just looked at, where you are helping a company apply a branch to new collateral, versus a micro internship where you are going to be helping them develop a wireframe for a new application. Those are probably going to be two different sets of skills, right? So the question is the same. Why should we select you for this opportunity? But what they want to know, depending on the details of the project, is different. So it's a long-winded way of saying, think about the question in the context of the project and answer accordingly. The next question or next tip is to use the description and other research to your advantage. So make sure you fully read. If they included a company description with the posting, read that. If they included a link to their website, check that out. It's going to take you maybe a minute, but it might give you some additional context about what they're looking for, about what their goals are, that you can maybe use to your advantage in your response. And then number 3, although in my opinion, sometimes I think this should be number 1 because it is very important. Show, don't tell. So I'm going to give you an example here of 2 different responses, all right? So if someone is applying for a project and they respond, they're applying for a social media content calendar project, and they respond to, why should we select you with, you should select me for this project because I've experienced making attention-grabbing social media posts. Not a bad response, right? But you got to think to yourself, you got to put yourself in the shoes of the company. If you have 2 folks at that company, they're talking to each other, and the one goes, you know, we should select the one that has made attention-grabbing social media posts. The other guy is going to be like, which one is that? Because presumably everyone applying for that project is going to have some level of experience or enthusiasm for social media, right? Let's look at response number 2. This is an alternate response. You should select me for this project because I've experienced creating attention-grabbing social media posts. As the social media chair for my sorority, I was in charge of the social media campaign for our recent Night of Pink fundraiser. I planned a series of posts and videos across 3 different social media channels over the course of the month leading up to the event. One of the videos I created got record engagement and contributed to increased attendance from last year's event. So if I'm now the company and I'm saying, we should select that one that did the great post for their Night of Pink fundraiser for their sorority, then that other company person is going to go, oh yeah, I liked them too. They're going to know who they're talking about. So consider when you are submitting these responses, say, I am the what candidate. And if you haven't put something in your response that is a unique something that could be put in this box, then you might want to rethink your response to include a specific example. So in this case, they're the Night in Pink candidate. They're the one that did the great post for their fundraiser or great series of posts for their fundraiser. And want to explain the STAR method too, because the STAR method is a really great way to make sure you're giving a specific example. So for those who aren't familiar, the STAR method, I'm going to put this in the chat, stands for describing a situation, a task, an action, and a result. And this is something to keep in mind to make sure you've given a full overview of your example or a full example. So when we look at this response and how they used the STAR method, so this sentence right here, they described a situation. The situation was they were the social media chair for their sorority. Then the task, they were in charge of the social media campaign for their Night in Pink fundraiser. That was what they were tasked with doing. That was the goal. Then they highlighted their action, that they planned a series of posts and videos over the course of that month. And then we've got the results. One of the video got record engagement and they got increased attendance from the previous year's event. So thinking about the STAR method is a great way to answer these questions. And keep in mind, the STAR method can be applied to other things than experience. So for example, maybe you don't have a lot of experience, but maybe you are really passionate about a particular area. You could apply the STAR method to explaining why you're passionate. You know, ever since I was a little kid, I have been interested in understanding how computers work because I got to, maybe you watched a particular movie and your brain really focused on that. And the result was you getting really excited about computers. If it's a really like first level micro internship, and we've seen those here, like examples of helping someone plan an app that doesn't require coding experience, but you can kind of get that first level, even just using the STAR method to explain your passion can help set you apart. So that's the example for show, don't tell. Don't just say you should hire me because X. You should hire me because X, and here's an example of why. The next tip is to mirror the brand tone in your writing. So if the description, if the company description really uses stereotypical professional language, match that energy. If the description says, we're looking for someone to make some bussin' TikTok videos, no cap, no printer, all facts, use that language in your response if that is authentic to you, because that's what they're looking for. Also want to make it clear, things should be succinct. Now, even if we look at this response, yes, this one's a little bit longer, but it is a grand total of 1, 2, even though it didn't highlight, there we go, 2, 3, and 4 sentences. We see that most successful responses are somewhere between 1 and 4 sentences. These are not essay questions. And when possible, go beyond a yes or a no. So when we go back to looking at these example projects, you know, you might get asked a question like, do you have experience with Adobe Illustrator or something like that? Go beyond a yes or no. If you do, explain what you've used Adobe Illustrator to do. If you don't, maybe you've used a program similar to Adobe Illustrator and highlight that in the transferable skills. So these are our tips, folks. If you use these, you are likely going to have great success with your application responses. And at the bottom here, we even have some examples of real short answer responses, both that have been selected for micro-internships, as well as some of those that have not. So for example, this person clarified a specific source of passion. They were selected. This person put their response in all caps. They had spelling errors. They highlighted more on how this would benefit them as opposed to what they were bringing. And accordingly, they were not selected. So as you review these yourselves, you're probably going to start seeing some of those tips. You know, this person used the STAR method and they gave a great example. This person used the STAR method. They highlighted how they've used some of those in-demand skills in the past. And you see those that were not selected typically are the ones not using those tips. So before we scoot on, any questions about how to respond to those application questions? While y'all are thinking, I see there was a question from international students. Do you need to use CPT? For some schools, CPT is an option. For other schools, students who use primarily pre-completion OPT, that's where you're going to want to meet with International Student Services at CSUN because they are going to be able to walk you through what your options are. We just don't overstep from the Parker Dewey side of things because every school is a little different. I see the question, where do we see these short answer questions again? The actual questions when you're applying are going to be when you click into the project and you hit apply. That's where you're going to see the questions they're asking. But if you're asking about the resources that I just shared, that's in this link right here. If you go down here, you're going to see those example responses. And above is going to be the tips. This resource right here about keeping your responses succinct but informative, This is going to show you those two examples that I was talking about. So sorry if that's a little discombobulating. I know we've got things in a few different places, but those are all the resources that we just covered in regard to applying. And then once you apply, just to give you that kind of sneak preview, you know exactly what companies are seeing. This is what they see. So like I said before, the same information, although you'll have your experience down here, if you added that experience, as you should, you can see those application responses front and center, that personal statement front and center. You added a resume, that link to that resume, or if you added additional documents, front and center. So you want to make sure that those things are all up there, all looking good, that photo too. And you can see again, they might send you a message or they might go directly to approving you for this project. Now, if they have selected you for the project, you are going to see it. I'm going to close some of these windows because I got too many now, folks. There we go. You are going to see it move from your applied section to the selected section, and you're going to get an email notification with next steps. And this is what I want to make a very, passionate and sincere plea, folks. Whatever email address that you are using on your Parker Dewey account, maybe you already set it up and you didn't use an email address that you check regularly, you can switch it at any time. Please use an email address that you check often, because there are a few things more heartbreaking for us at Parker Dewey than a student who has completed their profile, responded thoughtfully, gotten selected for a project, and then they get deselected because they didn't respond in time. And these are very much on demand. So check the email address regularly. You can also know what the status of your project is at any time, because if it was here and then you see it disappear and it didn't show up over here, that's how you know you are no longer being selected, or not selected, considered for that specific project. The rest of these are pretty intuitive. Once you've completed it, it's going to pop over here. Any messages are going to be shown here, and you'll also get email notifications about those. And once selected, I know we're running short on time here, but just want to make it very clear, once you're selected, you're going to get all the information you need from Parker Dewey. You don't need to remember any of the rest of this stuff from today's presentation about next steps. But we like to give you a little bit of a preview in case you got anxiety, you just want to know you're going to be supported. But we'll send you the kickoff materials. You can reach out to the contact person at the company, because again, you get to talk to them directly to set off a meeting to make sure you have everything you need. If you have questions along the way, as long as you are not disclosing any private company information, typically they're not going to give that to you as a micro intern, but just in case, you can ask faculty, am I doing this the best way? This is what I'm thinking about this. So that's kind of just a reminder. Don't forget to make use of your existing network when you're working on the project. If something isn't going how you expected, you're like, oh, I thought I knew how to do this, but I'm in over my head, or the scope of this project is bigger than I thought, anything like that, reach out to us. We can help you professionally navigate just about any situation, and you're still going to come out of it looking good. The only challenges that we can't really help with is if a micro intern just stops responding because they're anxious, or if something is going on. Emergencies happen. If something's going on in your life, you can no longer complete the project, reach out to us, let us know. We will help you navigate it professionally. And if you are selected for a micro internship, you will get paid again, because all of these are paid at the end of the month in which you complete the project. Now, again, you'll be reminded of that when selected, but sometimes we'll have folks forget, if they do a project and it finishes on September 2nd, and then they're getting to September 28th, and they're like, I haven't gotten paid yet. Parker Dewey stiffed me. No, we are never going to stiff you. You just get paid at the end of the month in which you complete that project. A reminder again, you're going to get resources along the way. We will send you step-by-step for when you are in the micro internship to help you be successful. Very similarly, we are going to send you step-by-step after the micro internship to help you be successful. These are set up in real nice, I think I've said the word step-by-step too many times now, but step-by-step, we encourage you to review your feedback, reflect. We give you tips on how to add this to your resume and to your LinkedIn. Again, as an independent consultant of Parker Dewey, we give you resources to share your experience. We give you reminders for keeping in touch with your supervisor, because they're part of your network now. We show you how to ask for a recommendation. So when we highlight these things, again, you'll get them all again if selected for a project, but we highlight these things because we want to make sure you are not alone when you're working on these projects. So here we are coming full circle now back to the impact. These are the same students we had early on who are highlighting those challenges. I'm not going to read all these quotes out loud to you, but you can read for yourself how micro-internships helped them address those challenges. For the students who were not sure what they wanted to do, it allowed them an efficient way to explore. For students who couldn't afford unpaid internships, they said, I could spend some time on this because it was compensated and because the flexible schedule didn't require me to quit the paid jobs that I was already working. We had another student who said, after I got a micro internship, now I had more confidence. I had things to talk to people about at career fairs, and it helped me launch my career. And that's really what micro internships are intended to do. If you are inspired by success stories, you want to read some more of them, we've got quite a few for our international students. Check out China MLM, check out Sci. They are some international student success stories, but encourage you to take a look at these and see how other students have made these really work for them. And if you haven't already, go back to the starting page where we were at the very beginning. Create that account. If you decided to just watch today, hey, that's okay. But hopefully you are convinced now. Go create it, get started, complete that profile, log in regularly, apply to all projects that interest you, and apply right away. If you get selected for one and then you find out you're selected for another, you can let us know you're at capacity. You are not obligated to take a micro internship if you applied to it. That always ends up being a question I get. So that's why we say apply to any and all that interests you. You are not obligated to be overwhelmed. You can back out if you need to. And if you have an interest in a really niche company, maybe you want to have a project with a specific company that you don't see using Parker Dewey yet, then maybe join us. Our next live session of this webinar isn't until December, but you can check out the recording and slides from our previous one. In this webinar, we'll coach you on how to find contacts at specific companies of interest, and we'll review templates that we put together for you so you can ask those companies professionally about the possibility of them posting a micro internship for you. So if that is of interest, the link to that is in the chat. And one other recommendation I have for y'all is we have a Career Launcher LinkedIn page, and highly encourage you to give this a follow because we highlight events like the one I just mentioned. We highlight specific resources. We highlight perspectives from other past micro interns. So if you want to hear from other micro interns, see highlighted projects, check out some of our resources. This is also a great page to follow. And with that, that is our webinar for today, folks. If anybody has any questions, I am happy to hang around. I see we've already got some. Love it. How often do more micro internships come up? These are posted at all different times of year and at all different times of day. So sometimes you're going to see different things depending on when you log in the day. Sometimes there might be a couple of days between when you see new projects, but new projects are being posted all the time. Scrolling back up, can these micro internships count as credits towards your major? That depends on your institution. That is going to be a question for CSUN staff because every school is different, just because registration deadlines and the number of hours and all those things is different for every school. So that is going to be a CSUN question. Awesome. And I don't think, if I missed your question before, it was not intentional. Please feel free to put any questions I might have missed back in the chat. And while I'm waiting for those additional questions, just want to say thank you, everyone, for your time today. It was a pleasure spending a little bit of our Tuesday, whatever day of week it is together. Pretty sure it's Tuesday. And look forward to seeing you all on the platform and hopefully maybe even writing one of those success stories about some of you soon. Anything I missed, Jan?
I think you covered a lot of information.
How can I get this video?
Sir, excuse me, sir. Can you put your information in the chat? We are not taking any audio or video responses. If you could put it, because we're recording today. So if you could just put your question in the chat, that would be great.
I can put
your question in the chat.
Okay.
Please do not speak. Please put your microphone on mute.
But I think they probably will go ahead and put it in the chat. But yeah, to Priscilla's point, Jan, I think they were asking when this recording will be available and where they can find it, if you want to answer that.
Okay, I did put something in the chat. I said that we are posting this on this video will be available on the CSUN Career Center YouTube channel. The link is in the chat. When, I can't guarantee when. We already have yesterday's videos posted. And I'm not the one who's doing that, so give us a couple of days, or you can check in a day. I know Danielle went over a lot of information. She jam-packed it full of information. And so I think it'll be really useful for you to go back through and view the sections that you have questions about. I think it'll be very helpful for you, for all of you, actually. I've gone back and watched it more than once because there is so much information, and she's got great links in the chat. I will say that one of the challenges that our students have faced at CSUN is the short answer portion. Don't discount the short answer portion. It is vital for you to answer that as completely as possible, but as succinctly as possible, as Danielle was saying, because a lot of employers, they look at that short answer portion and they may hire based upon the short answer information. So it's really going to be very, very important for you to focus on that. And of course, you can always connect with us at the CSUN Career Center, as well as Danielle, did you put your email? Can they connect to you directly, or?
They are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, but a good LinkedIn practice, everyone, make sure when you request to connect that you add a note. So you'll see that option when you go to connect. Whenever you're connecting with someone new, you should add a note, and I do not accept requests unless I get a note. So just say, hey, I appreciated the CSUN webinar, and I will accept that request from you.
Ah, okay. So you now have some insight, but you can also go to parkerdewey.com. There's a lot of information on, you can go onto our website, and that's the CSUN. It's Parker Dewey. It's branded by CSUN, but if you go onto the CSUN website, Career Center, website, which is csun.edu/career. There's a button, a big giant button that says Micro-Internships. If you click on that, it'll take you to the source that I think you will probably are looking for. So I thank you again. I want to thank Danielle because Danielle's job is very busy. They are very busy at Parker Dewey. They have a pretty lean staff. They do, I think she probably shared this with you, they do hire micro interns as well. So I just want you to know there may be something presented to you, and it may be from the staff at Parker Dewey. Also, she works remotely. So as you can see, I won't say it's her backyard, but it's in her neighborhood. That beautiful scene that you see in the Zoom background. And so a lot of our speakers, they come from all over the US. And it's exciting that this is one of the reasons why we do this virtually, is so we have this ability to bring people in. So I want to say thank you. And please, our next session is at 2 p.m. And at 2 p.m. we have LA County internship program. So I hope that you come to that, because we will not be live streaming that event. It is only, you can come and watch it live, but it will not be posted on our YouTube channel. So I hope you have the chance to come today. And again, and then at 4 p.m., I believe we have Enterprise Holding. So really good options today. Danielle, thanks again. And we'll stop the live stream and the recording.